Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, welcome everyone. And we'll try to so we just recapped just before the recording, yeah. Contradictory, equivalent, 3P and 4P. Is that clear for everyone? Or do you have some doubt? Yeah, okay. Like for instance, okay, for instance, book and cup. Book and cup. Yeah, there is nothing in the world that can be both. Yeah? So they are different and they have no common base. Yeah, so there is nothing in the multiverse of Doctor Strange that can be a book and a cup. Yeah, so they are contradictory. So that's the first type of comparison. Yeah. Then we could say, okay, equivalent. We could say, as we said before, water and H2O. Yeah, they are equivalent. If it is water, it's H2O. If it's H2O, it's water, and so on. Yeah, so they are equivalent. Yeah. Then three possibilities would be, for instance, human being and person. If it's a human being, it's necessarily a person. But if it is a person, it's not necessarily a human being. It can be a deva, it can be a preta, and so on. Yeah. Okay. And you have something which is none of them, like a cup. A cup is not a person and is not a human being. So three possibilities. Yeah. And four possibilities, as we said, a monk and lama. Yeah, you have some monks which are lama, like His Holiness Dalai Lama is a monk and a lama, or a guru or a master, we could say. Then you have monks which are not lama, they are not masters. You have masters or lamas which are not monks. And you have something which is none of them, yeah, like a cup, or like me. Okay. Okay, four possibilities in this case, yeah. Yeah, is that okay for everyone? Very good. So then after, the way we play during the debate is just like, is the challenger asserting a two-part consequence or a three-part consequence? But we will play with that anyway. Okay, so today I have slides. We'll try to enter in something a bit more profound, but yeah, not everything is complicated anyway. So if you check, for instance, in Appearance and Reality from Guy Newland, he gives lots of good detail. He would say that if we study the Sotrantika, for instance, there are at least 5 benefits from that. Yeah, we can understand the two truths, for instance, that the two truths they don't impede each other. Yeah, the two truths, like conventional truth and ultimate truth, they don't impede each other. The existence of the one doesn't negate the existence of the other. So that's one way we can understand after the Madhyamaka as well. Yeah, the higher level of this philosophy. Then also conception. Yeah, he says that we learn in the Sotrantika that the conception is necessarily mistaken but can be valid. And we understand after in the Prasangika Madhyamaka that any mind which is not a mind of an Arya being is necessarily mistaken, but is also necessarily valid on some point. Yeah? So it helps as well to understand the distinction. Then also parts and whole, in the Sotrantika, they accept that the table and the parts of the table, they have the same level of existence. Yeah. So we will understand that also in the Prasangika. So that's why it's interesting as well. Permanent phenomena also for the Sotrantika, they are merely imputed phenomena. Yeah, because they need a thought consciousness in order to be explicitly apprehended. Yeah, so it helps us to understand also the Prasangika. For the Prasangika, not only permanent phenomena, but all phenomena are merely imputed phenomena. So that's a good help as well. And specifically characterized phenomena also in the Sotrantika, the Swalakshana, yeah, the impermanent phenomena, they exist by their own characteristics. they exist inherently. Yeah. So if we understand well what means a swalakshana according to the Sotrantika, then we have the object of negation of Aryanagarbjuna, yeah, of the Prasangika Madhyamaka. So that's very useful as well. Okay. So just tiny points about that. Okay. So last time we saw the definition of definition and the definition of definiendum. You remember? Yes. And it's written here. Okay, we said that the definition of definition is a triply qualified substantial existence. Yeah, and or we can say like like we said before, just to have fun, a triply qualified whatever. Okay, and the definition of definiendum is a triply qualified imputed existence. Yeah, so we will see the meaning here with Daniel Perdue in Debate in Tibetan Buddhism. He says that a definition is called a substantial existent, dzeyu or dravyasat in Sanskrit, because it is the actual object, the meaning or referent of its definiendum. Yeah, when we say the substantial existent, it means the real thing in itself, we could say, in one sense. Yeah. Okay. And the triply qualified imputed existent, a definiendum is called an imputed existent, Tagya or Prajnapti Sat, because it is the name imputed to its definiendum. Yeah, maybe I made a typo here, but we will check. Okay. Anyway, the most important thing is here, this sentence here. However, this does not mean that whatever is a definiendum is necessarily a name. Yeah, for instance, color is a name, but it is not sound, but a visible object. Yeah, if we say that any definiendum is a mere name, then it would follow that fire is sound, or color is sound, or person is sound, which is not the case. Yeah, it's not the case at all. It's just the way we see the thing through its name. Yeah, that's the way to understand that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we have many points here. Substantial existence, what does it mean? So there are very good teachings in the beautiful adornment of Mount Meru. That's Chankya Rinpoche Dorje's text on the tenets, and especially page 207, he says, he gives 4 explanations of substantial existence, and we find them also in Debate in Tibetan Buddhism, yeah, page 760. So we can recap them like this, yeah. The first meaning of substantial existence means it is established by reasoning. It exists. It just means it exists. Yeah, so that's just the first assertion. The second one would be it is permanent, a substantial existence in the sense of being statically unchanging. Yeah, Tembar Mingyurwe Zeye, yeah, in Tibetan. So those developments are given especially in the Drepung Gomong textbook, yeah, in the Sedura. Yeah. Okay, and the third one is a substantial existent in the sense of being able to perform a function, Dunjen Upet Zeye. And the fourth one, substantial existent in the sense of being self-sufficiently apprehensible, Rankyadzin to Petzeye. So the 2 last ones are more interesting for us because when they give the 4 here, they say it's a terminological division. Do you remember what we call a terminological division? For people who followed the previous classes? We spoke about that when we spoke about the generalities. Yeah, we said there is a terminological division into 3 generalities. Yeah, what does it mean?
Meaning collect is that what it is? Collection, generality.
Yeah.
Meaning
Yes.
generality.
Yes. And
specific. No, I don't know what this is.
and type generality, yeah, into three, yeah. Okay, and some of them are not generalities, yeah. Yeah, so we saw, like, for instance, pot and pillar. Pot and pillar is the set of the two is a collection generality, but it's not a generality because there is no instance. So that's why when we say a terminological division, it means it's a way to speak. Yeah, like for instance, if we say that there is a terminological division of flowers into two, natural flowers and artificial flowers, would you agree with that? Yes, because it's a terminological division because artificial flowers are not really flowers. We call them like this, yeah. Okay, very good. Very good. So here, yes, Palavila?
Can I ask this about substantial existent in the sense of being statically unchanging, and then
Yes,
in the sense of being able to perform a function?
yeah.
These two have to happen, but how can you perform a function without changing?
Yeah, so that's why they are contradictory, yeah. Yeah, if we speak about substantial existence in the sense of being statically unchanging, we speak about permanent phenomena. Yeah. And if we speak about substantial existence in the sense of able to perform function, we speak about impermanent phenomena. Yes, so they are contradictory. Yeah.
But are they so for something to be substantial existent, does it need to meet all four?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's why it's very, very complicated when we hear substantial existence in Buddhist philosophy. There are so many kinds of meanings. Yeah, so that's why we try to check those meanings. And the two first meanings are not really substantial existent. It's a way to speak about them, but they are not really substantial existent. In reality, when we speak about substance or substantial existent, it means impermanent. Yeah. Okay, very good. So we will see those, and in also knowledge and liberation, you can see in knowledge and liberation, page 52 and so on, there are some explanations about those three. And Anne Klein is explaining mainly the number 3 and 4. Okay. So now we will see the number 3 first, yeah, because that's the real meaning of substantial existence, yeah, able to perform function. Okay. So then it means when we speak about substantial existence, it means impermanent. And when we speak about imputed existence, it means permanent. Yeah, that's the broadest way to speak about that. Yeah. So do you remember the definition of definition? What was it? Triply qualified, whatever.
Qualified substantial existent.
Yes. Triply qualified substantial existence. And here we have substantial existence. So if we compare triply qualified substantial existence and substantial existence, would it be contradictory, equivalent, 3P or 4P?
Contradictory, permanently.
Ah,
Yes.
contradictory for Palinala. Okay. So yes, if we speak that way, you know, triply qualified substantial existence and substantial existence, it's a bit complicated. But if we speak about can it be a definition and impermanent? Do we have common base? Do we have any common base between that which is a definition and that which is impermanent?
Able to perform a function.
Yes, yes, at a moment able to perform function, it follows that the subject able to perform function is a definition.
Except.
So it follows it is a triply qualified substantial existent.
Except.
Yes, and it is impermanent.
Except.
So it is a substantial existent.
Mm, yes, except.
Yes, exactly, because substantial existent means impermanent, yeah. So yes, we have definitions which are impermanent, like able to perform function, yeah. It's the definition of functioning thing, yeah. Okay, very good. So do we have definitions which are permanent? Yes, we have many, many permanent definitions, no? Okay, let's check the eyebrows of people just to see if people are following. Okay, yeah, we have so many definitions, yeah, and some of them are impermanent, like able to perform function. Yeah, we could say momentary, yeah, or clear and knowing. Or what could we have? There are so many. There are so many. Hot and burning. Yeah, that's the definition. It follows that the subject hot and burning is the definition of fire. Okay, so it follows that the subject hot and burning is impermanent.
Accept.
Yes, it is impermanent because
Because
It is
because
changing
it
because it is momentary and changing.
yes, because it is momentary, yeah. Okay, it follows that if it is momentary, it's necessarily impermanent.
accept.
Okay, so the subject, for instance, the subject hot and burning is a definition and is impermanent.
Accept.
Okay, very good. And we have definitions which are permanent, for instance.
For instance, that which does not change from moment to moment.
Yes, a phenomenon which is non-momentary, yeah? Yeah, a phenomenon which is not momentary. Yeah? That would be one definition of permanent, yeah? Yeah, a phenomenon which is not momentary. Okay, very good. So it follows that the subject, a phenomenon which is not momentary, is a definition.
Accept.
Okay, it is a definition because?
Because it is the definition of permanent.
Yes, very good. It follows that if it is the definition of permanent, it's necessarily a definition.
Accept.
Yes, and it follows that if it is the definition of permanent, it's necessarily permanent.
Accept.
Yes, very good. So the subject, a phenomenon which is not momentary, is permanent
Accept.
and is a definition. Yeah,
Accept.
so if it is a definition, it's not necessarily impermanent, it can be permanent.
Right.
Very good. So it follows that if it is a triply qualified substantial existent, it's not necessarily a substantial existent.
Mm,
Wow, very good. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. Yeah, Valeria.
Sorry, I want to jump back to the previous one because we said hot and burning is momentary and changing.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is impermanent. But as a definition, the subject definition, hot and burning, is permanent.
Yes. Yeah. It
Is that
because,
right?
yes, because
Okay.
it is
So even
permanent
though
because,
hot and burning, subject hot and burning is impermanent,
yes,
subject definition hot and burning is permanent.
yes, exactly, because definition is permanent. It's a conceptual abstraction, yeah?
Got
So
it.
if definition is a conceptual abstraction, then definition hot and burning is a conceptual abstraction, yeah?
Got it. Okay. And then we
Very
also
good.
have definitions that are impermanent and permanent, or it can all there can also be definitions that are permanent. Okay.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah. So that's why it can be confusing when we hear triply qualified substantial existent. It's necessarily a substantial existent. Not at all. Yeah, because the triply qualified substantial existent, which is, for instance, okay, a common base between phenomenon and non-momentary, or a phenomenon which is not momentary, it's a triply qualified substantial existent, but it's an imputed existent because it is permanent. Yeah. Wow, very good. Okay, and the Sotrantika would add something more. They would say merely imputed existent. Yeah, because that's the, I don't know if you remember the definition of generally characterized phenomenon, yeah, samanya lakshana, yeah, which is equivalent with permanent. A phenomenon which is merely imputed by a term or thought consciousness and is not established as a specifically characterized phenomenon. Yeah. Dato che tapatsam yingi ransando majopeche. Dato che tapatsam yingi in Tibetan, it is merely imputed by a term or thought consciousness. Yeah. Okay, so then if it is a phenomenon which is merely imputed by a term or thought consciousness, then it has to be permanent for the Sotrantika. Yeah, and for the Prasangika, it would mean any phenomenon. Any phenomenon is merely imputed by a term or thought consciousness. Okay, so that's just a tiny point. Very good.
Sorry,
Okay.
can you give us an example,
Yes.
Priscilla, of the previous one? Yeah, generally character.
Yes. For instance, permanent, existent, we could say definition, one, different, any permanent phenomenon is a generally characterized phenomenon.
But can impermanent phenomena also be generally characterized phenomena?
They are necessarily specifically characterized phenomena. They are swalakshana, yeah, that we have here. A phenomenon which is established by way of its own character without being merely imputed by a term of thought consciousness. Yeah. Very good. Very good. And we said before that swalakshana, a specifically characterized phenomenon, is specific in three ways. Do you remember that? Maybe not. Yeah, everybody is so busy. After the debate class, we do so many things. We forget what we spoke about. Yeah, we can say that, for instance, that cup is a swalakshana because it is specific in three ways. In its very nature, it doesn't share its nature. Yeah, yeah, we would say in Tibetan, "Ngo madreba, ngo madreba." Yeah, it doesn't share its nature. It's that specific cup, and even another cup is very different from this one. Yeah, okay. Then in its time, also its duration. Yeah, when another cup is broken, this one still exists. Yeah, or if this one is broken, then the others still exist. Yeah, so it's very specific in its duration. It doesn't share its time. Yeah, du madreba in Tibetan. Yeah? And also the localization. Yeah, where you put that cup, you cannot put another cup. Yeah, yul madreba. Yeah, it doesn't share its localization. So it's very specific in its very nature, in its time, and its localization. So yeah, that's very specific in this case. Yeah.
So
And it
can we
is,
say it
yeah.
as space, time, and object? Is that what we're saying? It's
Yes, we could say like this. Yeah, space, time, and nature, or space, time, and object. Why not? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And it is established by way of its own character. Yeah, it exists by its own characteristics. That's why it's the object of negation for Arya Nagarjuna. Because
so
yeah.
it means if it is one, it cannot be the other. Is that what you mean by its own characteristics? Like if only Pallavi can be Pallavi and others can't be Pallavi.
Yes, and in a way that is not merely imputed by a term or thought consciousness. That's why it exists by its own character. Yeah. But for Aryanagarjuna, yeah, you can be one, but without existing by your own characteristics, yeah, without inherently existing. Yeah, because everything that exists has to be merely imputed by a term of thought consciousness for Aryanagarjuna. Yeah, but for the Sotrantika, for the non-Prasangika, we would say if it exists inherently. Yeah, by its own characteristics. Yeah. There is some quote from the Abhidharmakosha from Acharya Vasubandhu who says in Sanskrit, yeah, Swalakshana dharanat dharmaha Yeah, because it holds its own characteristics, it is a phenomenon. Wow, it's so beautiful. So that's why here we have the object of negation of Nagarjuna. Yeah? Okay, very good. Very good. Yeah, exactly. Swalakshana. Yeah. Okay, Nagarjuna would be very, very discontent with that. In that way to assert impermanent phenomena. So we will speak about that later. Yeah. Okay, very good. So another point here, very important in order to understand the coarse level of selflessness of the person, yeah, for the prasangika, at which be the subtle level of selflessness of the person for the non-prasangika. Okay, substantial existent in the sense of being self-sufficiently apprehensible, yeah. Okay, so let's check what it means. Let's check. Okay. So, okay. So substantial existence, which is self-sufficiently apprehensible and is very different, we could say, it's contradictory with imputed phenomenon or imputed existence, which is not self-sufficiently apprehensible. Okay, so here the definition given in Drepung Gomang, that you can find also in Debate in Tibetan Buddhism, around the page 760, something like this. So a phenomenon with respect to which the ascertainment by a valid cognition does not need to depend on the ascertainment by a valid cognition of another phenomenon, which is not its nature. Very complicated, but not so much, not so much. That's so useful, so useful. Okay, so we will discover what it means. So in reality, in Tibetan, they say ngor, yeah, ngor, the entity, but that would be misleading if we say entity, yeah, because the person and the aggregates of the person are one entity. They are not different entities, yeah. Okay, so that's why we could say nature in this case, yeah. Okay, and an imputed phenomenon or imputed existence which is not self-sufficiently apprehensible is defined or could be defined as a phenomenon with respect to which the ascertainment by valid cognition needs to depend on the ascertainment by valid cognition of another phenomenon which is not its nature. Okay, we will see what it means. For instance, in order to see time, you need to see a watch. Yeah, because time is an NACP. Do you agree with that? What is an NACP? What kind of strange animal is that?
NACP is that impermanent phenomena which is not form and not mind.
Yes, Shavila, very good, exactly. An NACP, a non-associated compositional phenomenon, is defined as a functioning thing or a composed phenomenon, which is not form and not consciousness. Yeah, so time is not form. So how can we say that we see time and we need to see a watch? Yeah, that's why time is an imputed phenomenon, is not self-sufficiently apprehensible. Still, the watch is substantial phenomenon, a substantial existent, which is self-sufficiently apprehensible. We don't need anything else than the watch in order to see the watch. Do you agree with that? Yeah, we can say that even, okay, the light that is sent by the watch, we need that light, yeah, but that light is still form and the watch is form, yeah, so they are not different natures. Yeah, still time is an NACP. So its nature is to be a composed phenomenon which is not form and not consciousness. And in order to see time, we need the watch, and the watch is form. It is not an NACP. That's why their nature are very different. They are other. Yeah, do you follow me? Okay. So that's the same with the person. The body, we need the body in order to see the person. The person is also an NACP. The person is impermanent, but the person is not the body. and the person is not the mind. Yeah, it's not the conceptual mind, is not the visual consciousness, and so on. Yeah, do you agree with me? Okay. So in order to see the person, we need to see the face or the body or to hear the voice of the person. Yeah. But the person is not the voice, the person is not the body, and the person is not the mind. So that's why we can say that the body of the person is a substantial existent, but the person itself is an imputed existent. Because in order to see the person, we need the ascertainment by a valid cognition of something which is not the person. We need to ascertain the body of the person, for instance. Yes, Palavila.
Sorry, just so if we just think of mind,
Yeah.
A mind is composed of thoughts,
Yeah.
but thoughts and thoughts are impermanent. Are thoughts and mind of the same nature?
Yes, we can say that, okay, that the mental consciousness and the conceptual consciousness are one nature or one entity, because it's still consciousness. Yes, and you cannot have any thought consciousness outside of the mental consciousness. Yeah.
Okay.
So when we
Is
say
it
there are,
substantial existent then? The thought, the mind is mental consciousness is substantial existent, not imputed existent?
exactly, yes, because for instance, for someone who is clairvoyant, his mind will see directly the mind of the other person without needing the ascertainment by valid cognition of something else. But
I mean,
if I'm not clairvoyant and I want to see, for instance, if you follow me, I see your eyebrows, then I infer what's happening in your mind. It's an inferential cognition in this case. It's not a direct perception. Yeah, here we speak about for direct perception, how we ascertain directly something. Yeah, how can we say that we see someone? We see someone because we see the face of someone. Yeah, like we see time because we see the watch. So if we need to ascertain something else than the mind, than the person, or something else than the time, then it means that time and the person are imputed existent. Yes, but remember, they are not merely imputed existent, because for the Sotrantika, merely imputed existent means permanent. Yeah, so here we speak about imputed existent, which is not self-sufficiently apprehensible. Yeah, is it clear for everyone? I hope.
I actually didn't understand why merely imputed is
Yes,
not.
because for the Sotrantika, the definition of a generally characterized phenomenon is a phenomenon which is merely imputed by a thought or a term, by a term or a thought consciousness, without being established as a specifically characterized phenomenon. Yeah, so it's merely imputed by a term or a thought consciousness. Yeah, in order to apprehend space, for instance, we need the thought consciousness. Necessarily. So space is merely imputed by a thought consciousness. Without the thought consciousness, we could not explicitly apprehend space. Yeah. So space is permanent because it's the appearing object to thought consciousness. Yeah. Yeah.
And what about prasangika? Do they say merely imputed means impermanent as well, right? Because functioning and because they say everything is subjective, but still things function. So
Yes. So the
that is the difference.
Prasangika would say if it's impermanent or permanent, so if it exists, it has to be merely imputed by a term or thought consciousness. Because if you look for the phenomenon in its basis of imputation, you cannot find it. Still it exists, but not in its basis of imputation. So it exists through a concept. Yeah, it exists merely imputedly. Yeah, whether it's impermanent or permanent. So that's why it's very useful to understand first the Sotrantika when they speak about permanent phenomena, which are merely imputed, Then after we can go further to the Prasangika and check, okay, everything, every phenomenon, impermanent or permanent, has to be merely imputed by thought consciousness. Yeah, very good. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So if you make the difference between substantial existence, which is self-sufficiently apprehensible like a face, like a voice, and so on, and the compared to that, yeah, which is contradictory to that, an imputed phenomenon which is not self-sufficiently apprehensible, then that's perfect. Then that's very useful for the rest, yeah, for the following up. Okay, so as we said, the face is another nature than the person, because it is form, and the person is an NACP, is a non-associated compositional factor, yeah? Okay, but if we said which is another entity, that would be difficult, because the person is not another entity from its face. Yeah, the aggregates and the person are one entity. So that's why if we say that they are another entity, then that would be misleading. Yeah. If we say that they are another nature, then that's okay. Yeah, the nature of the face is to be form, and the nature of the person is to be an NACP. Still both, they are one entity. Yeah. Okay. Okay, very good. So we said, okay, substantial existence. So, okay, substantial existence which is self-sufficiently apprehensible. Yeah, we said it's a phenomenon with respect to which the ascertainment by valid cognition does not need to depend on the ascertainment by valid cognition of another phenomenon which is not its nature. Okay. Then we have some points made by Zolines in realizing the profound view, for instance. Yeah? He would say, with regard to the object of negation, yeah, okay, the self-sufficient substantially existent person is refuted by examining if the I can be identified without identifying any of the aggregates. That's exactly the point here. Yeah. Okay. So we need to understand that gross level for the Prasangika, that gross level of selflessness of the person in order after to understand the subtler one. Okay. That's very interesting. And there is a note in Appearing and Empty, page 446, note 58, which says Buddhist essentialists have another way of describing substantial existence that is not an object of negation. Substantially existent objects can be identified without depending on identifying another object. Okay, we can identify the color red without identifying anything else. Yeah, that's exactly the point that we made here. Yeah. Okay, however, to identify a person, we must colonize their body, speech, or mind first. That's exactly what we said, yeah? But still, our mistake as an ordinary being, my mistake is to grasp at a person that would be identifiable without the need of anything else. That would be the mistake. Yeah? Halavila?
Sorry, I'm just slipping, so I need to understand. I think substantially existent objects can be identified without depending on identifying another object. So the
Yes.
problem is if everything was red and there was no other color, we could never identify red. We
Yes.
have to identify another object in order, because when you said, what was the three things, space, time, and object, if there is no differentiation, we can never, valid cognition cannot happen.
Yes, we could debate that point. Yeah, we could say, like, for instance, everything that exists has the very nature to be existent. So we could not make the distinction of what is existent or not in this case.
Yes, if nothing died, if nothing,
But still,
then we would think it's
yeah.
permanent. If there was no impermanent, we would never define permanent.
Yeah. But still, there is no non-existent, yeah? Non-existent don't exist, yeah? So only what exists is existent, yeah? So still we are able to distinguish existent and the existence of Palavila, the existence of a carpet, the existence of space, and so on. No,
Non-existent
because
does not exist.
yes, non-existent doesn't exist. Only existent exists. Still, we are able to distinguish what exists, what means being existent. No.
Well, somebody defined non-existent for us, which is why
Oh. So
we
it follows that the
understood
subject non-existent has a definition.
that which does
Ah.
not exist.
Oh, so it follows that if non-existent has a definition, it follows it exists, because its definition is a triply qualified substantial existent. Ah, okay.
The
Yes, so
definition
nothing.
non-exist, the
Yes.
subject, the definition non-existent exists. Which is why it is a substantial existent and it is permanent, even though it does not exist, because the definition exists. We defined it, somebody defined it.
Yes, but if you remember well, the definition is the very set of characteristics itself. Eh? So if non-existent has a set of characteristics, then it exists. Ah. Okay. So, but I follow what you mean. Yeah? If everything were to be red, then that would be difficult to speak about any color. But still, everything exists. But still, we speak about existence. Yeah, we can even have debates about that. Yeah. Okay. Very good. So here the point is that I think the note is from Venerable Thupten Chodronla. Yeah, the note is not from His Holiness, and she speaks about Buddhist essentialists. Yes, yes, and for those Buddhist essentialists like Vaibhashika and Sotrantika and so on, this type of substantial existence is not an object of negation. But it seems that even for the Prasangika, it's not an object of negation if we speak about the aggregate. So we'll have to check that. Yeah? Okay, so here in Searching for the Self, there is a quote from Arya Asanga's Nirnaya Samgraha. Yeah, and you find that also in Science and Philosophy in Indian Buddhist Classics. Yeah, page. You will have the slides after. You can check the reference. Yeah? And also in the beautiful adornment of Mount Meru, beautiful explanation from Chankya Rupa Dorje. Okay, that's exactly the same text from Arya Asanga that they quote. And here in Searching for the Self, the quote is very clear. Anything whose definition or characteristic is designated without relating to others and without depending on others, in short, is to be known as substantially existent. Okay, and anything whose definition is designated in relation to others and dependent on others, in short, is to be known as imputedly existent, not substantially existent. And the commentary of His Holiness is beautiful. He says, this explanation is accepted by all Buddhist schools. So all Buddhist schools mean even the Prasangika. Yeah. Okay, that's very important. Yeah. He says, for the lower schools, the substantial existence mentioned here is the subtle object of negation in the meditation on selflessness of persons. Yeah. Prasangika, however, say that this meaning of substantial existence is coarse and that the selflessness of the lower schools does not negate enough because the person is also empty of inherent existence. Yeah. So that's why for the Prasangika, when we say the person is empty of substantial existence, we mean the gross level of selflessness of the person. And when we say the person is empty of inherent existence, it's the subtlest level of selflessness. Yes? Okay, very good. Very good. So His Holiness would say in How to See Yourself as You Really Are, in a page when he says tasting your realization, that's beautiful. And also in realizing the profound view, also checking your realization, he gives exactly the same explanation. Yeah, if you try to use your reasonings in order to understand the selflessness of the person, then after you check your arm or your body, and if you still understand the selflessness of the person at the same level, it means that it was the subtlest level. Yeah, but he says that if there is some, you know, still grasping at the what kind of self of the arm or the body and so on, then His Holiness says then that was a proof that your reasoning was refuting a kind of gross level of selflessness. So you can check that as well. So here, okay, when we speak about the prasangika, they say substantial existence means inherent existence. We are not speaking about substantial existence in the meaning of self-sufficiently apprehensible. That's very different. Yeah? For the prasangika, when we say substantial existence, it means inherent existence, absolute existence, independent existence, and they refute that. Okay, exactly like the swalakshana that we saw before, the specifically characterized phenomenon. Yeah, a phenomenon which is established by way of its own characteristics, yeah, inherently established, yeah, without being merely imputed by a term of thought consciousness. That's the object of refutation, the subtlest object of refutation for the prasangika. Yeah? Okay, so here, Vener Geshe Gensen at Nalanda gave a class on the master's program last year, and so he's currently giving the class, yeah. But he spoke about the substantial existence, which is self-sufficiently apprehensible, and distinction between that and inherent existence, yeah, for the prasangika. So it means that for the prasangika, the person is empty of substantial existence, which is self-sufficiently apprehensible, and empty of substantial existence, which means inherent existence. Yeah? But according to Vener Geshe Gensen, the aggregates are empty of substantial or inherent existence. They are not empty of self-sufficiently apprehensible substantial existence. Yeah. Okay. Okay, the aggregates are merely imputed, but the aggregates are still self-sufficiently apprehensible substantial existence. Yeah. Okay. So after, if you check in debate in Tibetan Buddhism, then you can see that there are also different ways to answer that. They would say there is a difference between self-sufficient and self-sufficiently apprehensible. Yeah. Okay. Rankya tupa and Rankya zin tupa in Tibetan. Yeah. Okay. And also in beautiful adornment of Mount Meru from Chankaro Pedoje, yeah, there is a difference between the two. Yeah. Okay. So he would say self-sufficient substantial existence here and self-sufficient substantial existence in the context of selflessness of persons are different. Yeah. Okay. The former refers simply to its entity appearing as the object of the mind through its own power without needing to rely on the apprehension of another phenomenon. That's exactly what we said before. Yeah. Okay. The latter, the object of negation with regard to the person, yeah, must be sufficient, like a master who, without relying on the aggregates, rules over them. This is what Scholar says. Okay, so here to come back to the Sotrantika after those blah blah blah. Substantial existence, which is self-sufficiently apprehensible, and substantial existence or impermanent, they are not equivalent. So it follows that you can posit the difference between the two. Self-sufficiently apprehensible substantial existence and impermanent. So we will debate that later, next time. And we can also debate that, yeah, the difference between substantial existence, which is self-sufficiently apprehensible, and triply qualified substantial existence. Yeah, they are not equivalent. Okay, and the last one, substantial existence and triply qualified substantial existence. They are not equivalent either. Okay, so just to finish that point, after we will debate more easy things. Substance, yeah, it's made by Tendala Rampai, a beautiful scholar. Substance, if one wishes to analyze the term substance, dze or dravya, it undoubtedly is understood differently among 8 contexts. He gives eight contexts, from which the Madhyamikas, when they speak, of not asserting substantial establishment. Yeah, when the Madhyamika, and especially the Prasangika Madhyamika, when they refute existence, substantial existence, it means they refute inherent existence. Okay, but Tandala Rampa says, beautiful, humility, being of dull faculties, I am not competent to state these just as they are. However, you who have great wisdom, please decide it. Okay. Okay, sorry for the complexities. We will discuss about that slowly later, yeah? So just to come back, yeah, with the definition of definition, yeah, the definition of definition. It follows, you can posit the definition of definition.
Triply qualified substantial existence.
Yes, very good. It follows that the subject definition is not a definition.
Accept,
Yes, it is not a definition because.
because it is a definiendum.
Yes, very good. It follows that if it is a definiendum, it's necessarily not a definition.
Accept.
Okay, very good. Okay, yes. So then we debated, yeah, definition and impermanent, yeah, or triply qualified substantial existent and substantial existent. Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, so then it follows that we can posit the definition of permanent.
That which does not change moment by moment.
Okay, so it follows that horned rabbit is permanent.
Existing phenomena that does not change moment by moment.
Yes, yes, it follows that the subject, a phenomenon which is not momentary or not changing moment by moment, is the definition of permanent.
Accept.
Okay, very good. Very good. And it follows that the subject definition is permanent.
Accept.
And the subject definition is permanent because?
Because the definition, how would you say this? Because the definition, here the definition is of a permanent phenomenon, therefore the definition is permanent.
Ah, okay. Yes, if we say, okay, it follows that the subject, the definition of permanent is permanent because it is okay. Yeah, that would, yeah, we could say so, but still the subject definition itself, yeah, definition is permanent because
Because it is not changing, and it is a oh no, not a meaning generality. It is a generality, I think.
okay, so it follows that if it is a generality, it's necessarily permanent.
Oh yes, accept.
Okay, so it follows that the subject cup is not a generality.
No. A cup is an instance of a generality,
Yeah.
Yes,
but
it
a
is a
definition is a generality. Or can I just say it's not changing? I don't want to say it's a.
okay. So it follows that if it's not changing, it's necessarily permanent.
Except that
So
is
it
a
follows that the subject blue unicorn is permanent.
Oh, it is it is a phenomena that that is not changing. Maybe that's how.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, it follows that if it is a phenomenon that is not changing moment by moment, it's necessarily permanent.
Except.
Okay, so the subject definition is permanent, but if it is a definition, it's not necessarily permanent.
Right.
Okay, for instance.
For instance, a definition of impermanent, or for example, hot and burning.
Yes, okay, so yes, because if we say the definition of impermanent, then it's still permanent. But if we give what is that definition, then that's okay, yeah, momentary. Yeah, or hot and burning, yeah, hot and burning, that's perfect. It follows that the subject hot and burning is a definition.
Accept.
And it follows then it is a triply qualified substantial existent.
Yes, accept.
Okay, and it follows then that if it is a triply qualified substantial existent, it's necessarily a substantial existent. No, says Izar.
No.
It's not. It's not because, not necessarily because.
Hmm.
Because it has to, it is not self-sufficiently apprehensible, maybe?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. But still, it could not be self-sufficiently apprehensible substantial existent. It could be still substantial existent. Like the person. The person is substantial existent because it's impermanent, but the person is not self-sufficiently apprehensible substantial existent. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But if we say, okay, because it can be a merely imputed existent.
Okay.
Yeah, for instance, what can be a triply qualified substantial existent, which is not a substantial existent?
A person.
Oh, so it follows that the subject, the person, is permanent. And is a definition.
No. No.
Permanent phenomena.
Yes, but not any permanent phenomena. Yeah, if we say, okay, it follows that if it is a triply qualified substantial existent, it's not necessarily a substantial existent. So then we have to give a permanent definition. So
Yeah.
yes, a permanent phenomenon, but not any permanent phenomenon. A permanent phenomenon which is a definition, yeah?
Existent.
So it follows that the subject existent is a definition.
Except.
Oh, so it has no definition.
Oh, no. It is not. It is a definiendum.
But if you give the definition of existent, for instance, what could it be? Who has the definition of existent?
That which holds its own.
Yes, this one would be the definition of phenomenon, yeah? That which holds its own entity.
Entity, yeah.
Yes. So that's the definition of phenomenon. It's equivalent with existent, but it's not the definition of existent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because phenomenon is equivalent with existent. So the definition of phenomenon is also equivalent with existent. Yeah. Okay, but what would be the definition of existent? Observed by?
Valid cognition.
Yes.
Awareness. Yes.
Yes. Observed by valid cognition. It follows that if it is the subject observed by valid cognition is the definition of existent.
Except.
So it follows that it is the triply qualified substantial existent of existent.
It is a definition, except, yeah, triply qualified.
Okay. So it follows that it is a triply qualified substantial existent, but it is not a substantial existent.
Except.
Yes, it is not a substantial existent because
Because it is merely imputed.
yes, very good. Fantastic.
And it
If
is
it
merely imputed because, I just want to confirm because I just said it, but I think it is merely imputed because it appears to the thought consciousness. Is that what it is? Because
yeah,
it
but
only appears to the thought consciousness that it is valid. So the definition valid, it's observed by valid cognizer appears to my thought consciousness as a definition. Therefore, it is merely imputed and is not substantial existent.
yes, in one sense we could say like this, but for the Gelugpa, if we think about cup, the cup appears to the thought consciousness, but it's not the appearing object of the thought consciousness, yeah? So if we say because it is the appearing object to thought consciousness, then it's more safe. Yeah.
Appearing object. So existent is the
Yes,
appearing
exactly.
object of appearing to valid cognizer. So the subject existent is the appearing object to the thought consciousness when it hears observed by valid cognizer. Therefore, existent, the subject existent is that why we're doing it?
Yes, we can debate further, but if it's just say because it is the appearing object to the thought consciousness, it works.
Okay.
Yeah, because when we when we hear observed by valid cognition, our thought consciousness is not doesn't have as its appearing object existent. Yeah, it has as its appearing object observed by valid cognition. Yeah? Because the thought consciousness is operating through exclusion. Yeah. Okay, no problem. No problem. But if we say because it is the appearing object of thought consciousness, then it is necessarily permanent. So it is necessarily a generally characterized phenomenon.
Hmm.
Yeah, a phenomenon which is merely imputed by a term of thought consciousness without being established as a specifically characterized phenomenon. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, very good. Wow, fantastic. Okay, and if it is a substantial existent, it's not necessarily a triply qualified substantial existent. Yes, accept. It is not necessarily a triply qualified substantial existent because
Can you go back a few slides?
yes. Yes, okay. I will just plug my computer. Sorry. Yes, okay. That's perfect. So, yes, okay, it follows that if it is a substantial existent, it's not necessarily a triply qualified substantial existent. Everybody agrees? So it means if it is impermanent, it's not necessarily a definition. That's just another way to express the same thing. If it is impermanent, it's not necessarily a definition.
Hmm. Yes, agree.
Yes. Yes, if it is impermanent, it's not necessarily a definition because
Because it can be a definiendum.
yes, very good. So for instance,
For instance, fire.
fire, it follows that the subject fire is a substantial existent.
Fire is a substantial existent. Accept.
Yes, it is because.
Because it is impermanent.
Yes, fantastic. And substantial existent and impermanent are equivalent. Yes, very good. But the subject fire is not a triply qualified substantial existent.
Accept.
Yes, it is not a triply qualified substantial existent because.
Because it is imputedly existent.
Yes, okay.
Because it is a triply qualified imputed existent.
Yes, very good. If it follows that if it is a triply qualified imputed existent because it's a definiendum, it's necessarily not a triply qualified substantial existent.
Accept.
Wow, fantastic. Yes. And if it exists, it's not necessarily a substantial existent, and it's not necessarily a triply qualified substantial existent. If it
Accept.
yes, if it exists, it's not necessarily impermanent, and it's not necessarily a definition.
Yeah.
Yes. So what could it be?
Permanent and definendum.
Okay, yes, we have two subjects. Yeah, it's more safe. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, permanent is not a substantial existent, and permanent is not a triply qualified substantial existent. And definendum as well. Definendum is not a substantial existent because
Because it is permanent.
yes, exactly, because it is imputed existent, imputedly existent, or
Imputed.
merely imputed existent. Yeah, very good. And the subject definendum, it follows that it is not a triply qualified substantial existent.
Accept.
Okay, it is not because.
Because that is the definition of definition.
Yes, exactly. And the and definendum is not a definition.
Accept.
Okay. Thank you, Tsidamamola Gyobojeyon. Thank you very much. Yes, very good. Okay. So how many points do we have between substantial existent and triply qualified substantial existent?
3p.
Okay, positive perversion.
A triply qualified substantial existent can be an impermanent existent, but if it is impermanent, then it is not necessarily a triply qualified substantial existent.
Okay. So when we assert the perversion, like for instance, red cup and cup, yeah? Red cup and cup, there are 3p, yeah? Everybody agrees? Okay, so the perversion goes like this. If it is a red cup, it's necessarily a cup. But if it is a cup, it's not necessarily a red cup, yeah? So
Yeah.
in the perversion here, if we say it's not necessarily in both cases, then
Oh, sorry.
it tends toward 4p, no?
Yeah.
So yes, the confusion comes from the way to formulate substantial existent, triply qualified substantial existent. If we say impermanent and definition, it's easier.
So
Mhm.
here in this case, sorry,
Go ahead.
Yes, Apollinora.
in this case, it will be whatever is triply qualified substantial existent is necessarily substantially existent, but whatever is substantially existent is not necessarily triply qualified substantially existent.
Okay, so it follows that the subject observed by valid cognition is substantial existent because it is a triply qualified substantial existent.
I think I got it wrong. Because
Yeah,
oh no, it is whatever.
it is.
Can you repeat what you said?
It follows. It follows. Yeah, that's a good trick to make me forget what I said. Then you don't lose the debate. Okay, I said.
Whatever is observed by a valid cognition
So
is
this,
triply
you know,
qualified.
it follows that it follows that the subject observed by valid cognition is a substantial existent because it is a triply qualified substantial existent. Or we could choose another definition. Yeah. Okay. It follows that the subject, a phenomenon which is not momentary, is a substantial existent because it's a triply qualified substantial existent. Another way to assert that follows that the subject, a phenomenon which is not momentary, is impermanent because it's a definition. Ah,
Not momentary. There is permanent
yeah.
phenomena.
Yeah, a phenomenon which is not momentary, it follows it is a triply qualified substantial existent.
Phenomena.
Yeah, a phenomenon which is not
Yeah,
momentary.
okay, it is a definition.
Okay,
Yes, so
so
it is a triply qualified
substantial existent.
substantial existent, yes.
So it follows it is a substantial existent. Because whatever is a triply qualified substantial existent has to be a substantial existent.
Oh, actually, whatever is triply, sorry, actually, whatever is triply qualified substantial existent is not necessarily substantial existent.
Oh, very good. But if it is a substantial existent, is it necessarily a triply qualified substantial existent?
I'm confused.
If it is impermanent, is it necessarily a definition?
No, if it is
No.
impermanent, is necessarily not a definition.
Or necessarily not, or not necessarily.
Not necessarily a definition, or
Yeah, very
necessarily not a definition. Yes.
because if we say necessarily not a definition, then able to perform a function is
Oh.
not a definition because it's impermanent. Okay.
Not
Okay.
necessarily.
So if there is no perversion like this, it seems that we have 4P, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, between impermanent and definition. 4P, yeah? So it's another way to assert substantial existent and triply qualified substantial existent, 4P. Yeah, everybody agrees? Yeah, fantastic. Wow, so smart. Wow, I should make the higher level, yeah? Okay, so it follows that if it is a triply qualified substantial existent, it's necessarily not a definiendum.
Except it's not a
Okay,
definition.
so it follows that the subject triply qualified imputed existent is not a definiendum.
Oh, imputed. Yeah. Imputed is definiendum. Substan-
So it follows that the triply qualified imputed existent is a definiendum. No?
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah,
Sorry.
triply qualified.
Triply qualified imputed existent?
Oh,
Chandela
it's
says
a
why?
definition of definiendum.
Yes,
It is a
Apollina.
definition of definiendum,
So
but
if it
it is
is the
not
definition,
definiendum.
yes, exactly. So it follows that if it is the definition of definiendum, it's necessarily not a definiendum.
Except.
Okay. Wow, fantastic. So it follows that the subject triply qualified imputed existent is not a common base between definiendum and definition.
Triply qualified substantial existent.
No, triply qualified imputed existent
Imputed existent
is
is
not
not
a
a common base
between
between.
definiendum and definition.
It is not because it is only a definition.
Yes, exactly, because it is only a definition. Triply qualified imputed existent. It follows it is a definition because
It
It has the three qualities. Mm.
So- okay. But if we say okay, because it has the three qualifications, it follows that a definiendum also has the three qualifications.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we could say because it is the triply qualified substantial existent of definiendum.
Yes.
It follows that the subject triply qualified imputed existent is the triply qualified substantial existent of definiendum.
yes.
Wow,
Qualified
fantastic.
imputed is the definition of yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes. It's too
Fantastic.
confusing.
Yes, it's very confusing. But now, if it's a little bit more clear, when maybe next time, I don't know when, maybe not next time, but next time, I try to just recap next time about those points. And next time, maybe we can enter in the isolates. Because if we know definition, definiendum, and so on, then we can understand the coextensive phenomena with the isolate of pot, for instance. Okay. Okay. So maybe just a few easy debates. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So it follows. If you still have time, yeah, if you have 10 minutes or something like this, yeah. Yeah, okay. Very good. It follows that you know the difference between, so among contradictory equivalent 3P, 4P, between functioning thing and the definition of functioning thing. So maybe 20 minutes. Joking.
Contradictory.
Contradictory for Palavila. Then when we joke, during the debate, we would say, oh, really? Poker face. Oh, really? Are you sure?
Please don't joke. My brain already has no idea when you say very good, very good. I don't know if it's good or I'm falling into a trap. So please.
Okay. Contradictory. So it follows that there is no common base between the definition of functioning thing and functioning thing.
Accept.
So it follows that in the multiverse of Doctor Strange, nothing can be at the same time the definition of functioning thing and functioning thing.
Nothing can be at the same time the definition and functioning thing. No.
Yeah, the
Accept.
definition of functioning thing. Okay. Okay. So it follows that the subject able to perform a function is not a functioning thing.
Accept, because it is the definition of functioning thing. It is
Okay.
not.
So it follows that if it is the definition of functioning thing, it cannot be a functioning thing.
Accept.
So it follows that if it is hot and burning, it cannot be fire.
It cannot be fire because it is the definition of fire.
Okay. So it follows that the subject hot and burning is not fire.
Accept, because it could, hot and burning could be hot water.
Okay. Okay. So it follows that who said that definition? Maybe Acharya Vasubandhu. The great scholar Acharya Vasubandhu, the second Buddha, Acharya Vasubandhu made a boo-boo when he gave the definition of fire.
Oh, no, it is the definition of function of fire, but it is
Yes,
not fire because it is
it
the
is not fire.
definition. Because a definition cannot be the definiendum.
Mm.
Fire is the definiendum.
Yes, exactly. So, okay. So it follows that the subject, hot and burning and fire are not equivalent.
The subject, hot
The
and
subject,
burning.
yeah, the subject, the two, hot and burning and fire, are not equivalent.
Except
They are not equivalent because
because they have no common base and they don't share the 8 doors of provision.
Okay, so it follows that the subject fire in the kitchen is not fire and it is not hot and burning at the same time.
The subject fire in the kitchen is fire, except
And
it's
it is hot and burning. If you go closer with your hands, you could feel the warmth and the
except
burning.
yes, fire in the
Oh.
kitchen is an instance of fire.
It's not my question. So it follows that the subject fire in the kitchen is fire and hot and burning. So hot and burning and fire are not contradictory. Still, one is a definition, one is a defining them.
Mm. Oh,
They are equivalent. If it is fire, it's necessarily hot and burning. If it is fire, if it is hot and burning, it's necessarily fire. Yeah,
okay.
one specific definition and its specific definendum share the 8 doors of pervasion, yeah? Otherwise, the definition is not really good.
Mm.
So
Yes.
able to perform function, it follows it is a functioning thing.
Able to perform a function is a functioning thing. Able to perform a function. Didn't we just establish that definition and definitum are opposite?
That's not the point. If we say the definition of functioning thing and the definendum of able to perform function, they are necessarily contradictory.
Yeah.
Because one is a triply qualified whatever, and the other one is the triply qualified whatever.
Yeah. Substantial and imputed existence. Yes. Then
Yes, exactly.
why is this not contradictory? I
Because
don't.
if it is able to perform a function, it's necessarily a functioning thing. If it is a functioning thing, it's necessarily able to perform a function.
Mm.
Okay, so it follows that they are equivalent.
No.
So the great scholars of the great Nalanda tradition made boo-boos when they gave in the dictionary the definition. When they say Artha Kriya Shakti, it is the definition of what is Bhava, yeah, in Sanskrit, Vastu or Bhava, yeah, the functioning thing. Okay, the great Acharya Dharmakirti made a boo-boo when he said Artha Kriya Samartham is the definition of a functioning thing, yeah? But is able to perform a function, yeah?
Oh, so are they
Able-
equivalent then?
Yes.
Definition of functioning thing is equivalent with functioning thing.
No, definition of functioning thing is permanent. But if it is the definition of functioning thing, it has to be a functioning thing.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
Yes,
Yeah.
very good. Yes, that's the point, yeah?
if it is the definition of functioning thing, it is necessarily functioning thing. Otherwise, why would you be defining the function?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Fantastic. Wow. Okay. So then, are they still contradictory? Definition of functioning thing and functioning thing?
3P.
3P, facciaveva. Ah, okay. So it follows we can posit a common base between the two. Definition of functioning thing and functioning thing.
Accept.
Yes, what could it be?
Able to perform a function.
It follows that the subject able to perform function is the definition of functioning thing.
Accept.
Yes, it is because
Because it is the triply qualified substantial existent or functioning thing.
yeah, very good. Fantastic. Yeah, so it follows that if it is the triply qualified substantial existent or functioning thing, it's necessarily the definition of functioning thing.
Excellent.
Yes, very good. And the subject able to perform function, it follows it is a functioning thing.
Accept.
Yes, fantastic. So posit the perversion if you have 3P.
Uh, whatever.
Yeah, if it is.
If it is the definition of functioning thing, it is necessarily the functioning thing. If it is a functioning thing, it is not necessarily the definition of functioning thing.
Wow,
Yeah.
fantastic. So it follows you can posit an illustration of a functioning thing, which is not the definition of functioning thing.
Accept.
Yes, posit.
Pot.
Pot, it follows that the subject pot is a functioning thing.
Accept.
Yes, but it is not the definition of functioning thing.
Accept.
It is not because
Because it
Because it
is
the definiendum of functioning
Yeah.
thing. Isn't it? No, it's not. Oh my God.
I know.
The subject definiendum of functioning thing doesn't exist because functioning thing is a definiendum. It has no
No,
definiendum.
Pot is the definition.
Yeah, is a
Pot?
definiendum, yeah.
It is a definiendum.
Yes. So it follows that if it is a definiendum, it cannot be the definition of functioning thing.
Ah, yes.
Yes, very good. Okay, and it follows if you posit 3P that you can posit something which is none of them, the functioning thing and definition of functioning thing.
No. Horn of rabbits.
It is sentium of Ngopo, sentium of Ngopo, okay? If we say, okay, sentium of Ngopo, so illustration of functioning thing, the subject illustration of functioning thing, yes, yeah, we could say that it is permanent, yeah? Illustration of functioning thing is not the definition of functioning thing and is not a functioning thing, yeah? That was in the chat, yeah? Very good. And
Oh, illustration of a functioning thing.
yeah, because illustration is permanent. So that's why illustration of functioning thing is permanent. That whatever is that has to be impermanent. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Oh,
Fantastic. Yes. Wow. Or we could say instance of functioning thing. Yeah, when we study the logic as well, yeah, when we study later, we will say that in the syllogism, the subject sound is impermanent because it is produced. We can say that instance of produced is the dissimilar class that exists within the similar class. Yeah, so we will see that later. Okay, wow. So 3P between what and what?
functioning thing and the definition of functioning.
Yes. Fantastic, very good. But if we compare the definition of functioning thing and the definiendum of able to perform function, that would be
Then it would be equivalent.
okay. So it follows that if it is a triply qualified imputed existent, it's necessarily a triply qualified substantial existent.
So definition and definiendum in general are contradictory. But if
Yes.
it is the definition of a definiendum, then they're equivalent, no?
Yes, definition and definiendum are contradictory because if it is a triply qualified imputed existent, it cannot be a triply qualified substantial existent, and whatever is a triply qualified substantial existent cannot be a triply qualified imputed existent. So definiendum of able to perform function and definition of functioning thing are contradictory. Yeah, but if you choose a specific definition and its specific definiendum, they are equivalent,
Okay.
like fire and hot and burning.
Sorry, so 1 second. So function and able to perform functioning thing and able to perform function are
Yeah, if we say
equivalent.
functioning thing and able to perform function are equivalent because one is the definition and the other one is its definiendum. Or hot and burning and fire, hot and burning and fire, observed by valid cognition and existent, and so on. Yeah, they are necessarily equivalent. But if we say the definition of functioning thing and the definiendum of able to perform function, they are necessarily contradictory. Because one is a triply qualified imputed existent, one is a triply qualified substantial existent. Yeah. Wow, very good, really. Yeah. I'm very impressed, yeah, really. That's so nice, yeah. Because it helps a lot for the yeah, sometimes we don't think so, yeah. Oh, he tends to make us crazy and so on. We tend to think like this, yeah. But if really we have the perspective of the Madhyamaka and so on, then we can understand well, you know, the isolates and so on, yeah, the difference between impermanent and produced, yeah, they are one entity but different isolates, or the body of the Buddha and his mind, they are the one entity but different isolates, or the two truths in the Madhyamaka, they are one entity but different isolates and so on. It's so useful, yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. Sorry for the slides, but for next time we try to follow up with all those points with the definiendum and the isolates. Yeah, we'll try to enter into that. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. And you can do your dedications as usual, yeah, for the long life and good health of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and for the sake of all the beings. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Christopher.
Thank you, my great pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.